Welcome to Buying and Beyond, the buying podcast that aims to entertain and inspire. We're Kate and Linz, and together we have over 30 years' experience in retail, including Accessorise and M&S to name a few high street names.
We've been through the highs and the lows, the ups and the downs of fashion retail buying and beyond, and we really want to share this with you.
This is a safe space for us to share our stories, tips and advice, and we have some friends joining us along the way to give us their thoughts and opinions too.
We hope this podcast will help anyone looking to get into the industry, as well as those already enjoying the wild world of retail buying, as many of these stories will hopefully feel very relatable. So grab your drink of choice, sit back and have a giggle with us. Hi Kate, we're back for episode 6. So what are we going to talk about today?
Hi, so today we're going to talk about the importance of a critical path. Essentially, a sequence of tasks that you need to finish on time in order to complete your initiative, which means that any delays in critical tasks will delay your entire project. It's kind of similar to a Gantt chart, and it can be the same in any industry. So if you're planning a big event or a tech release, or you're an athlete in training, you all need to have like a set number of tasks that you need to do in order to meet your moment of certainty.
Exciting stuff. So this is a really, really important stage in the life of a buyer, isn't it? You know, I think it sort of sets the scene, sets up your next few years, sets up your next few seasons.
Yeah, and
You're
it kind of
living in the future.
You're always living in the future. I mean, just earlier you were saying it was 2024, and I was
I know,
like, oh, hold up, not yet.
I keep doing that. I keep typing.
Oh, 2025. Oh no, I'm doing the trends for 2026.
I will be doing the trends for 2025 soon. Yeah.
It's so hard, isn't it,
nuts.
to know? Are you in the moment, or you're either doing a retro, so what happened in 2020 or 2021? I mean, do you even look at 2020 or 2021 anymore? Or do you actually just look back further to 2018 and 2019? Like, it's actually quite hard to do retros. I mean, that's a complete side
note, yeah, 100%, 100%. No year has been the same for a very long time.
And that can even be hard when you're prepping your critical path, because often you will base your critical path on how your season went the season before. So actually, have your shipping times been extended, etc., etc. But we will go through sort of like the step by step in a bit more detail, right?
We're going to break this down for you. Don't you worry. You don't need to follow our tangents.
And we're going to talk about a traditional sort of critical path, really. I mean, I've worked for we both have worked for smaller companies where you kind of have a bit more like you just throw it and just sort of like see what sticks. But what we're going to go through is much more of a proper process in place, milestones and like kind of key critical dates that you need to hit. And actually we find as kind of like traditional buyers that you live and die by your critical path.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's something that I always teach the junior members of the team, that it is something that you need to nail at whatever level you are. I think when you're slightly junior, you should have your own form of critical path, because you've got different milestones to hit to the rest of the team. But it all feeds into one big body of work.
It's often the buyer that will set out. Well, actually, I mean, it starts from even higher than that, doesn't it? Really, if you think about your critical path, it actually starts from very much like your business strategy. Strategy we can again go into in a whole separate episode, because I think that's got so many legs. But it does start with like the whole business strategy, doesn't it? Which then sort of then breaks down into like your department strategy, which then breaks down into your team strategy, which then will outline what dates do you need to hit in order to be getting your product in. You're also going to be looking at your retros, as we've said, previous dates. When do you need to be getting those products in to be able to kind of like cover your sales from last year?
Very important.
But also based on your budget, what sales are you being expected to hit by the company?
Absolutely.
And so often the buyer will then set that out based on their trips, their sample development times, etc. But then really it filters down to like the AB and the BA to be monitoring it. So in many places that I've worked, it's the BA's responsibility to bring the critical path to every team meeting.
Yeah, exactly. And then they're often at a different section of it, aren't they, where it hypes up for them. You know, you set the strategy.
In terms of workload.
Yeah, in terms of workload. You've set the strategy, you run with the ball, and then you sort of pass the ball to each level, don't you? Pass the ball down to get to that, like you said, moment of certainty. So, Kate, we do all this planning, and all looks great on paper, but sometimes things don't go to plan, do they? It's just plan for it not to go to plan.
Yeah, and you always need to have something sort of waiting in the wings, don't you? It's almost like you have to be thinking 2, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really similar to kind of what we've talked about before, about how buyers are spinning lots of plates. You are juggling all sorts, and you're also kind of preempting, okay, well, if that slips out, and then how do I move that to there? Or your date slips out, or samples haven't arrived in time, and you've got to sign off next week. How are you going to suddenly mock something up?
Oh, mocking up is the best thing ever. Gosh.
Sitting there with a white ballerina that you now want to be purple, and you're sitting there with a felt
tip pen.
colouring it in.
I think for me it's always packaging, isn't it? It's okay, how can we get a cardboard box and just, wrap a bit of paper around it and then draw a stick man?
Yeah. Yes.
So it's going to look something like this.
Not that long ago, actually, I was asking. So we were expecting a sample to come in, and we were trying to work out. We needed to do a stack of something. We were trying to work out how many of them we were going to be able to stack.
Yeah,
it's really hard to imagine measurements in your head of how deep something is. So I asked one of the buyers if they could mock it up for me. And because it was so large, but clearly we didn't have any card in the business, so it was just tapes, lots of A4 sheets of paper taped together.
Oh, brilliant.
To essentially try to make this sort of 60 by 80 by 40 box or something. And
wow.
It was just... I mean, it really does. I mean, when people say you just do cutting and sticking, that really was the kind of
oh my gosh. I remember I used to have a head of merchandising, and he would love to refer to, I'm sure I've said this before, he would love to refer to a buyer's job as colouring in.
Which, by the sounds of things for this, is a lot of what you do.
Thanks, mate. That's really...
Or, on jewellery or something like that, you'd be sitting there stringing beads together, wouldn't you? Suddenly.
My gosh, we often used to do that, didn't we? String up a bracelet or something from a necklace because the sample wasn't quite right. And often the technologists would come in and be making stuff, and the designers,
sitting there with little pliers and things and twisting things around. And
I learned so much from that, actually, in terms of how to make stuff.
Yeah,
very
really
creative,
isn't it? Really creative. I have
really
loved
good.
that. But there's definitely an element of plan for it not to go to plan. And as the buyer as well, you own it, really. And I think we've mentioned merchandisers and we've mentioned designers, and very much have got their own roles and their own entities, but they need to follow your critical path.
Yeah, you set it.
You set it, and you have to make sure that everybody's sort of following it. And as I mentioned earlier, often it can fall to sort of the BAA to be bringing that critical path to team meetings and making sure that everybody's on the right path. And I think that does feel quite daunting when you feel like you're the most junior member and you're calling people out on whether or not they've met their deadline.
Yeah, for God's sake.
But it's really good for, improving your confidence, and also just knowing it. And I don't think you fully know a critical. I think this is why, actually, often they say you have to do at least a season or two.
Yeah.
People want to get promoted quite quickly, right? You come in as a BAA and you really want to be a buyer.
Yeah.
And actually, they say with any job, don't they, that it takes 6 months to actually even
Bed
understand
in.
your role.
Yeah.
And then for another sort of 9, another 6 months on top, so the 9 to 12 months to kind of actually build on it until you kind of really know your job. But I would say in buying, actually, you really do, or you benefit from. Some people get promoted super quick, and that's great.
Yep.
But I think you really benefit from understanding a critical path and seeing a season through.
Yeah, 100%.
And not just one season, but often 2 seasons.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really valid point. And I think even just having this document, a critical path, helps you document that journey too, with your progression. You can look back and then you can help plan the next year to say, I know what's coming up. And actually, that pinch point was far too stressful. Let's move it back. Let's push it.
Yeah,
there,
let's allow a little bit more time for that. And do you know what? We could have probably signed that bit off a bit quicker. You can even look at how you might be able to kind of capsule things. So actually, do you know what? In order to be able to book some production space, we know that we could probably do our core.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of know what they're going to be at the beginning.
Core
Let's get
continuity.
those. Yeah, done, dusted, signed
likes.
off, placed with the factory, continue with the other bit, then get that signed off, sort of like layering on your pieces and spacing things out and giving the factory a little bit more breathing space as well.
Yeah.
When you know some things are dead cert. So there's definitely lots that you can do with moving your critical path around.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I think for those not in the industry, it's kind of likened to, like you said at the beginning, as planning a special event or we've talked about it being any goal that you got in your eye line, losing weight.
Yeah, training for a 5K.
Yeah.
What do you need to do? Like Couch to 5K is a great app, which is actually a critical path.
Yeah.
If you broke it down.
I love that app. Really needs to start doing that app again.
Me too, I should do that. 5K is a tough one.
Stressful.
I can just about do 1K, I think, at the moment, and then I have to stop. But it's good. It's a real gradual way of doing it, but it's a tick box. You achieve that and you can move on to the next bit. I definitely set up a critical path for my wedding, which I think my now husband thought I was absolutely crazy.
And you called everybody your suppliers as well, which I always thought was really funny.
So, do you know what I also had? I also had a PowerPoint of my themes and my trends.
I would do that too. I think we did that when we went on holiday this year.
Yes.
Tangent.
These are my mood boards. But it is any kind of event, you really do need to have like a critical path. And and you do end up with your critical paths. And it depends on how many you can be juggling. Because when you're buying multiple different categories, they'll work to different critical paths.
Oh, gosh.
Because your sampling times can be different. Your shipping times will be different. Like your launch dates will be slightly different. So
it's a real art, isn't it, to get that all down on paper and an easy document to follow and an easy document to read when you've got all that overlapping as well. And also, it's not just about you, it's about marketing, it's about packaging, it's about online. So there's other business channels that also have their own critical paths.
Or that you want to use your critical path.
Yeah, I mean, you start it, don't you?
So you kind of need to make it readable and usable for everybody. I have used so many different types of critical paths.
Yeah.
I still think my favourite is my original.
Okay, what's Kate's OG?
Oh, I know, it sounds like it's mine. Was not mine. Not my own invention necessarily. But when it's like, it's one that it was the first one that I took and then I really made my own. And over quite a long period of time, I refined it. And I am a fan of colour coding.
Oh, yes, we're buyers. Everything's colourful.
Again, my husband hates my colour coding. He looks at some of my spreadsheets and is just like, what? Why? And I love it. I'm like,
but that's just like merchandisers, isn't it? They just love the colour grey.
Yes.
Let's just make everything grey. And let's buy everything grey, black and navy.
Although, shout out, and I'll name her with her little nickname, Nat Nat. She was a fabulous merchandiser. She deserves a shout out.
A colour code.
She loves colour. Like, she was my favourite merchandiser. Loved colour. But I find that so easy to then identify things. Like, product reviews were all in blue. Sign-offs were all in pink. Like, sampling times all in yellow. It just made it really easy to identify. But when you move to other businesses and you find there's often already charts that people have got set up.
Yeah.
And you end up having to sort of use those because that's what everybody already within the company uses. And think that's why I loved the first one, because I'd known it from BAA.
Yeah,
and taken it all the way through, and I used a similar format to buy it, and I just honed it and just
perfected it.
Yeah. And so that's still my favourite.
It was your relatable colour coding masterpiece. Yeah. I love it. I'd love it. I'd love to see that at some point.
Would you know what? I might even create a couple of these templates and pop them on our website. So you can head to Buying and Beyond And there'll be a selection of different critical paths for you to download and use and see if they help.
They definitely help me.
It's a personal preference, so see which one suits you best.
I think that's a really good point, though, isn't it? I think if you do find a template, don't be afraid to personalize it yourself. You know, you don't need to be so rigid with these templates. It's totally flexible, workable, customizable. Is that a word? Customizable. Did I just make that up today?
No,
Love
it.
It.
Love that word.
Buzzword of the day.
Personalizable.
So I think that would be one piece of advice I would give is don't feel like you're stuck in a box with anything that you're using within your company. So many companies out there are really, really happy with people coming forward with new ideas on structure as well and how you work through things. I definitely do that when I bring on new people into the team. I sort of say to them, look, this is the way we've been working, but that's not to say it's the right way. If you think that you've got a more efficient way of working or a better way of working for yourself and your personality, then bring it to the team meetings and let's have a look at it. Let's try and all work together to achieve what we need to achieve in the best efficient way, you know, that suits your style of working.
Suits your working style. I have to say one thing is it's making it personalized for you so you understand it because you're the one that's using it.
Yeah.
But definitely starting with a template and the structure of showing what you need to do can be really beneficial rather than trying to just start from scratch and produce your own. And I think sometimes, like I said, when you go to somewhere new and they've already got something set up, be careful not to edit it too much because often they like the synergy of everybody using a similar template. So customize it, make it personalized, make it work for you. But at the same time,
don't go too far.
Don't go too far. Exactly. Exactly that. I think one of the other things we should probably just touch on, which I think you mentioned at the beginning, is just the one thing with critical paths is how you do end up living in a completely different season.
You do, yeah.
So either you're juggling summer and winter, you're buying summer and you're trying to work out how to get rid of your winter stock.
Yeah.
Or you're buying seasonal Christmas and you're forever buying Christmas.
Yes.
Let's face it. I mean, Christmas starts and ends at Christmas.
Yeah.
It's an all year round thing.
Absolutely. I've in previous roles have started in July and it takes me all the way through to probably when it's shipping in
July.
June. Yeah.
Exactly. You know? Yeah.
And then you start the whole process again.
Yeah.
So
it's the
maddening,
bit,
really, isn't it, to be in Christmas?
You're doing next Christmas from sort of July to maybe. Well, no, you're doing it from July onwards. Then you're into this Christmas to check how it's doing.
Yeah.
Then you're back into next Christmas because it's about to launch. And then you're doing the Christmas beyond. And then you're also checking how that's doing. It's a really funny one, isn't it? You're constantly doing it.
I love Christmas, don't get me wrong. But can you imagine doing it all year round?
Oh, gosh, no.
Slightly chaotic.
That's the other thing about critical paths because you're always living seasons ahead. And this will go to this will fall into so many of our conversations, but so often you can be bored of trends already by the time they launch.
Yeah.
Because you work so far ahead.
But you have to be I think you kind of need people to bring you back down to earth to sort of say, look, hang on a minute, we haven't actually tried this yet. So, you know, it is so relevant to our customer, but it might not be relevant to you, but it's not out there yet. So hold your horses, do you know what I mean? And especially working for different types of retailers. Some retailers aren't very trend driven and some retailers really are, and some retailers have their own trends really and that fall into their handwriting. So it's a balancing act, I think, not to get too carried away with something that might not quite suit that retailer.
And you don't need to go for trends as such. I think what I find sometimes is just the product.
Yeah.
So the new product that comes in doesn't need to be trend or not trend, but you get new product in that you're, I don't know, I'm going to use silly years, but say we're in 2025 and you've got your samples in for 2027, 2026, 2027. And it's just initial samples because it's just in that real kind of creative brainstorming. People are just sending things in just to be oh, what do you think of this? And you're thinking about ways you could change it and stuff. And you're doing some design briefs. Absolutely love them. I want to wear that right now.
Yeah.
By the time that comes into the shop, I'm over it because I'm already excited about 2028, 2029 stuff.
My God, mate, you're getting really carried away.
I would constantly be like that. I'd be like, oh my God, I love that bag. I'm going to buy that bag when it gets in. By the time it gets to that bag, I've already sampled something else that's new.
I know what you mean. I've had that moment with like, you know, working so far in advance, your product range launches, and you're critiquing yourself walking around the store saying, actually, no, I've you know, got the next year's product range lined up in my head, and I've been on the trip and I've sampled all this stuff.
I'm already really excited about this new stuff.
Oh, I wish I'd done that, like, you know. But you know, you have got to trust yourself and test and trial,
and also just live in the moment. I think that's the problem. Like sometimes, definitely in buying, you can get so carried away by living in the future, and also, let's be honest, like it's not sustainable. To constantly be wanting the next best thing. Like, that is a byproduct of living and breathing and working in fast fashion. And I think we've both had conversations about actually that's not where we want to be necessarily. It's a balance you need to get, I think, between...
We want to help that balance.
Yeah, like loving product, loving new things, loving innovation and creativity. But actually, also, it doesn't need to be the next best thing. And I think you were really right when you talked about, like, it doesn't need to be trend. It just needs to be, like, it could just be a retailer that's just got really, really strong, like, heritage or really strong, like...
Those are the ones that are surviving at the moment, though, aren't they? The heritage brands, the brands that really have a strong identity and a strong handwriting. Because people are all about trusting their purchases at the moment, you know.
And you're investing in something that isn't like a flash in the pan.
No.
Like you want to buy something you know that's going to last, like rather than just buy something that could be old news tomorrow. Anyway, totally digress.
Yes.
But I love these conversations. I hope you all do too. Shall we get started then?
Yes,
On
let's.
kind of a bit more detail into kind of that planning process and sort of like the step by step. So
so Kate and I have a step by step to talk you through.
And I think there's a lot of that will come out from it. So like sort of starting with your comp shop.
I do love a comp shop. So I think for people not in the industry, a comp shop is really where you go around lots of different retailers and you just sort of get inspired by them, really. I think a lot of people think it's copying. It's not copying at all. It's so important for you to understand your market and where you sit and what everybody else is doing.
And take inspiration from things, like whether it's a colour or a pattern, and be like, oh my God, I love that. That's great. Like, it would not work like that for my customer.
Yeah.
But what I could do is if I did something that had like I don't know, maybe you'd seen like a marble pattern in like a hot pink and red, and you're like, oh, that looks so freaking cool. I'm really loving pink and red. I have been actually for the past few years.
Pink and red.
Really love pink and red together. But that might not work for everybody.
No.
So it's a marble pattern that you've seen.
I'm not sure that would work for me. Pink and red.
And actually, that works. That would look so good in that shop. But actually, for my retailer, no. But what I might take from that is either the marble, just the fact that marble in bright colours, because so often you've been used to seeing a marble in like just a grey. So maybe you're like, that's really cool. I think a marble could really work for my customer, but it needs to be in like a blue.
Yeah, exactly. Navy blue.
A navy blue.
Yeah,
classic.
Of course.
A navy blue marble. So you're taking the inspiration from something, but you're turning it into something else. Or it could be you're like, that like tone of red. Haven't seen that for a while. I actually really like that tone of red, and it's the Pantone of that red that you want instead. So it's like it's taking inspiration from other things.
I think that hits the nail on the head for me, Kate. Sometimes when I'm out and about comp shopping, I'll find a really beautiful blue or a beautiful green that I'm like, oh my gosh, that's absolutely fantastic. And it might be something that it's like in a completely different product category to the product category that I'm buying for. You know, it might be like a notebook in a green, and I'm actually buying a pot or a
scarf
or a vase or you know, can't think of anything other product types right now, but you know, you sort of think, oh my gosh, that's a really, really, really beautiful tone. You know, let's be inspired by that and let's take that on. And also, for me, love doing the whole inspo trip side of things as well as comp shop. So going to other markets in the world. You know, we've travelled out to various different places, Paris, the States, Scandinavia, and just kind of seeing how these markets set up their products from a product concept point of view. So the States is a brilliant place for Christmas.
Well, that can also be the thing. It's not just the product. It's the product layout, product setup, or as you mentioned earlier, packaging.
Yeah, absolutely.
All the different components and again, of pulling it together. Visual merchandising of it all.
Absolutely. The store journey and on packaging, again, it doesn't have to be this specific product type that you're designing for. Like I get a lot of inspiration from chocolate boxes and the beauty industry and, you know, like all those industries that do packaging so well because it's so important.
Really good to have at that stage because as a buyer it's working with your designer to come up with a real concept of everything. So if you've got ideas for like the visual merchandising, the layout in store and things like that, the way the packaging should be, like that is what should all be coming from that really initial step. Some places do like trend workshops, like collaborations with other departments. You know, it can be really good to get the buying team, the marketing team, online insight, customer services insight. What have people been requesting?
It's a real group comp shop, isn't it? I think that's really important. You know, online team need to go and do their online comp shop. The product team need to go get out to the stores. The marketing team need to, you know, look at the store journeys everywhere. It's a real group effort. Everybody
getting out and everybody coming back together with everything that they found. And also going on trend research sites as well. Like let's not
WGSN all the way. Love that
Trend
site.
Bible.
Trend Bible,
and then once you've kind of got that bit, that's the real creative concept, most fun start to the project. You then kind of need to do your lessons learned, don't you? So you're reviewing your best and worst products. You know, what designs have worked for you, what prints, colours, themes. You'll get quite a lot of this information, particularly if you're a product buyer. You'll be getting a lot of this information through your merchandising team. They'll be running all these reports for you. But often if you're branded buying, you'll be covering the whole lot.
Yeah.
You go, girl. Or boy. You go, person.
Get the pronouns in there.
Yeah. You'll be getting total sales, sales by category, your price point, etc. Often you'll want to rack up your best sellers. So you want to look at how well they've been selling, so your rate of sale, value, units, just to show them in the different formats. And depending on how you buy, you might want to see them split by region or store grades. As we mentioned earlier, you'd review your launch dates. Like, was that the right time?
Yeah, exactly. And again, what is everybody else doing?
Yeah.
You know, I think Halloween's become huge these days. You know, it's not just about the throwaway budget supermarket look anymore.
It's a really curated kind of like, and it's not just Halloween, it's kind of more like autumn or fall.
Yeah.
In fact, one retailer this year in the UK called it fall.
Really?
Yeah. I know.
That's interesting.
Very interesting. But it is that kind of autumnal thing. And when does that feel right to launch? Because you want to make sure you've got a really good sales period, particularly if it is going to be really big and you're going to be buying a lot of stock into it. But actually, when does it feel comfortable? Like if it's a bit of a crappy summer, then you'd probably feel comfortable launching it as soon as the schools are broken up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember at M&S when we introduced a transitional season. So that was really, really groundbreaking, to be honest with you, because we'd all been used to 4 seasons, you know, and then we suddenly introduced this 5th season, which is quite a risk, really, because that's just a real small window. So you could potentially be buying a hell of a lot of markdown, right? You're not making much profit at all, but actually they identified a real gap and, you know, really bought into the right product that they could turn quickly and then get into.
If anything, they could probably elongate the period that they have the transitional stuff in there. Because let's face it, I mean, it's a whole nother conversation, I reckon, but it's something that everybody's been talking about for a really long time, yet nothing has shifted. The way that we buy seasons for autumn, winter and spring, summer are not aligned. It is not buy now, wear now.
It's not. I mean, sometimes you're launching autumn in August and everyone's still having a barbecue, you know, and I can't tell you how many times people get annoyed about how early Christmas is out on the shop floor. But yeah, if you don't do it one year, it's like, well, where's Christmas?
And also because you need to look at your sort of your sales curve, and actually it might be quite small to have it there, and you might get a few disgruntled, like, I can't believe Christmas is in the shops already, or like, you know, we're launching Easter on Boxing Day or something.
My
Easter
mum and
eggs
dad
are
always
already-
have a bet, like, who can buy the first cream egg.
Do they? Oh, I love that. That's cute. That puts the fun in it. Because it's better than people being like, I can't believe it's
found
already
it.
here. And it's like, oh, I'll just roll with it. But there is a real sales curve. And, like, the fact that particularly with online and things like that and search terms, like, you can see it so much better now, can't you? Like, when it was people coming into stores, you could see it by numbers. But actually, when does the interest start? When do people start looking for it? But you've got to identify your sales curve. And for some companies, actually, in your first week, if you only take 100k, they'd be like, well, don't bother. But for others, actually 100k actually is a large proportion of my sales. So I do want to launch it on that day, because if I don't, where am I going to make up that 100k?
Exactly. I mean,
elsewhere?
especially for a new online business, for example, that's really important, isn't it? But yeah, so that was a interesting segue into seasonality.
Sorry, yes.
So we were talking about
key
lessons learned. Yeah. And I just one more thing I wanted to touch upon on that. I think because we work so far in advance, sometimes it's really hard to know when to do those lessons learned, because you can't wait too long, because you've got to get into your strategy bit of work before your sign off. So you might just be entering into that season, and you've got to think about not just what's launched, but what's worked well over the last 2-3 years.
Because buying habits change, right?
They do.
Seasonality of trends, like everything sort of differs, and it might be that you need to kind of look at where you've got your areas of growth, but actually where you've missed sort of areas. So step 3 is a quick one, actually, isn't it? It's where your designers and buyers collaborate. So then, based on all of that information, your designers and buyers get together and you propose your new season, themes, ideas, shapes, trends, etc. So it's all a combination of that step 1 and 2. And then you very quickly bring in your merchandisers with your buyers and you plan the budget for the next season. So you show them, this is what we're going for in terms of new season themes, blah, blah, blah. And then you work on how you're going to divide up your options, how you're going to spread them across the subcategories. As we mentioned earlier, what's your continuity?
Yeah.
What's your newness?
Very important. You can't just bring in everything new. It just is, for anybody that is entering into the industry, retailers do not just get rid of everything and bring everything in new for the next season, because ultimately, from your cash flow point of view, it is not achievable. You have to have a certain level of continuity in there, flowing through, and then you're just refreshing and trying to exit anything that really, really hasn't worked.
It's also not worth it sometimes, is it? Like, sometimes at the end of the day, a denim jean is a denim jean. You could bring in different colours, but you would never get rid of your blue denim jean.
A pearl earring is a pearl earring.
It's a classic.
A gold ring is a gold
white
ring.
T-shirt, a black T-shirt. Like, some products are just staple and you just want to keep them running. And you might be able to do some negotiation on like price and things like that. You might improve the fabric quality. There might be a fit that you might do to improve it.
Yeah, exactly. Or start
Ultimately,
tendering, you just keep your supply base on their toes. They might have been used to that 10,000 unit business on that black T-shirt, but that might mean that their pricing's getting stale. So you can change things up by, moving your supply base around, things like that.
There might be advancements in fabrics and production techniques. And actually, you want to make sure that you are giving the customer the best product on the market.
Absolutely. That's what we're in it for.
And just really quickly, we've talked about budget and how you're going to plan your budget. But your budget, where does that come from? Yeah. Ultimately, again, it's similar to strategy, isn't it? It's a top down, really. You have the. I think people like to think that the buyers set their own budget, or the teams, departments, merchandisers set their own budget, but it's given to you. You can come up with a number that you think you're going to achieve. Yeah. But actually, it all filters down from actually what does the company want to achieve top line.
Absolutely.
And therefore, how are you going to feed into that, and what marketing, et cetera, they're going to put on top of it to make your number bump up.
But I do think it's really important when you're going into your strategy meetings, because quite often you might not have all that information at that point. And I think it's really important that you're going in with the number you think you're going to hit, so that you can. I think a lot of people sort of say, well, I don't have a budget, so I'm waiting for it. Absolutely not. You're the expert. You're the person that's found these products, put these ranges together. You know exactly what you can achieve from that. And then I think that's why you have that hierarchy in buying, because, you've got your commercial director coming in and saying, well, actually, we're going to do X, Y, Z to boost online sales. And, actually we're bringing in this new marketing tool, which will mean our reach will be, 10 times more.
Or we're going to move around the store and actually your category is going to be
front and centre.
Yeah. And therefore you've got a bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
And that's great because you know what you're going to back. And in a like-for-like format, you know what you would be able to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, if you're going to layer some other things on top, okay, well, then I know what I need to... That's my stretch.
Yeah, exactly.
Or it could be like-for-like, but actually they're going to take a bit of space away from you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's fine. But in that scenario, I'm going to take it back. So
yeah, exactly.
I totally
I'm going to pull
agree.
that back.
You come up with what that should look like.
Yeah, because I think so many... I mean, in my experience, there's been some departments that I've worked on where people are just a little bit too in the box and they are waiting to be told what to do, but you just don't get on and progress in your role unless you can
own it.
Yeah, unless you can sort of say, no, I am the expert and this is what I think. If you wait for that budget, you're going to be so far down your critical path waiting for it. You just can't.
You've missed all of your... You've missed all your milestones.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And also,
booking deadlines.
There needs to be, and we'll go through this again in future episodes, I'm sure, because it comes up time and time again. But as a buyer, you need to stand by what you believe in. Like, part of being a buyer is being decisive.
Mm-hmm.
It's making a decision and standing by it. Might not be the right decision, right? But you've got reasons for it. As long as you've got reasons and you can back it up, I think sometimes you can get caught out when you're wobbly.
70% data, 30% gut?
Something like that.
Something like that. I'm sure people would disagree, but that's what these sign-offs are for, aren't they? They're a debate.
Exactly. And as you say, so we're in the strategy meeting by this point. So you've taken step 1, 2, 3, and 4. You've pulled all that information together and you've gone into the strategy meeting with your heads of, your directors, etc. And the buying, merch and design all presenting to the leadership team the proposals and, as you say, putting forward what they think or you think you should be doing for the budget.
It's a really big meeting. I probably prep more for this than I do for a sign-off because it just sets the tone. It sets the train of thought that you're going on. It sets up the sign-off meeting, doesn't it? And if anybody's got any sort of curveballs to throw in there because they're not quite,
at that point.
They don't think that's quite right for the company, you've got time to change tack. Yeah, absolutely.
And often it's quite good to have already preempted some of this.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, definitely making sure that your whole team, so your designers and your merchandisers and the buyers, they're all aligned with their thinking.
Yes.
So you can all back each other.
I've been in meetings before where that's not been the case and then you just really trip each other up. And then, your head of's going, I remember one time when I was quite junior, the buyer and the merchandiser, they just really didn't get on at all. And my commercial director was just like, she was quite feisty, loved her, but very scary. She was just like, you two need to go and sort this out. Basically, she's sort of telling them to go off and have a team building day together and just say, you need to be on the same page.
That's a really good way of saying it, because otherwise they just pick holes, and that can be a really painful meeting to sit in when they can know you're not all aligned, and then it's tumbleweed, absolute tumbleweed. And often it can be good to get your head of buying, or for your head of buying to have your director on board. So already, you've been going through the comp shops, the lessons learned, you've been collaborating, you're coming up with these trends, making sure that during your one-to-ones, you're sharing that information. So it's not suddenly going to
surprise. I'm actually going to bring in a whole new range.
Yeah, you've already set the scene. People are already like, okay, kind of know what you've started to sort of like put in place.
Yeah.
It makes it a much more comfortable meeting. And often your head of buying can then support with the director.
Yeah.
You know, because they understand what's going on, and often then the director already has an idea of what's coming on. They're going to have their own questions because obviously
absolutely.
The information will be filtered, so there'll be less and less, but at least they've got an idea of it and they can ask those questions. But any challenging questions, your heads of can support.
Very diplomatic, Kate.
Well, I just think it's the best way to do it.
Yeah, I agree. Been through many painful strategies.
Otherwise, you're just an island. You are surrounded by some
You're just
really...
sitting on the Maldives on your own.
Maldives would be good. I was thinking more like an iceberg or something with these choppy waters around you, and you're just like, oh my God, I'm going to melt at any point and go under.
Yeah, I mean, the Maldives is probably a bit of a stretch, wasn't it, actually?
I'd happily go and sit in the Maldives.
Yep.
I'd happily be on my own island.
Dear.
But sorry, to move on. So once you've had your kind of strategy agreed, you're all happy. So if you send your trend packs, design briefs, your tech packs, etc., sending it all out to your suppliers. And which suppliers you decide to send it to depends on often their kind of what their strengths are.
Absolutely.
So again, we'll go on into that in a much more detail in another ep, but we talk about like suppliers and how you set up your supplier strategy and sourcing
absolutely.
and things like that.
Yeah, it's such an important integral part to them feeding into your strategy plans. You know, you talk about that a lot. Sorry, just jump back 2 seconds. In your strategy meeting, you're talking about who you're working with, who are your key partners to drive this strategy and drive this product range. So, yeah, getting them on board. I think, you know, at some points in some critical paths, I would get them on board a little bit earlier as well. But, you know, giving them the firm analysis of what's actually happening in the strategy and then giving them a firm brief afterwards is
for
really,
them to
really
actually
important.
start their sampling. Yeah, but you're right. Like it's bringing everybody. We keep saying the word, but like bringing everybody on that
Together.
journey. Like everybody knows.
One team, one dream.
Yeah, what direction we're going in. Because
Got to get that in there for people that know me.
once we get to that point where you've sent everything out, you start to kind of do some of your trips. So it may be that actually you do quite a lot of Far East sourcing, but actually it might be that you've got some like UK suppliers too. So you'll be arranging your supplier meetings. Maybe you'll be going to some trade shows, often UK and abroad. And when you go abroad, it can often be an opportunity to review those products. So you go out to the supplier showroom. So again, in your critical path, you need to be giving yourself enough time to be able to send out those packs for them to be able to actually sample them so that you can go out there and see them. And it's actually a lot quicker and easier, I've found in the past, rather than waiting for them to send boxes and boxes of stuff for you.
Yeah,
which actually then you're like, well, I don't want half of that. And then you've just got all this
stuff.
Excuse my language, but crap.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that's
it's
so
easier
important.
to just go out and be like, yeah, that worked. No, I didn't. You know what? And explain the briefs.
Yeah.
Or find something in their showroom to be like, okay, you used this material, but actually I think if I would have used this as a base.
Yeah. It's just back to that whole sustainability piece, isn't it? And also quite often, guys, if you're asking for 50 samples and you're actually only going to sample 5, they're putting it in your cost price.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
There's
just
unnecessary
no
to
point
do
doing it
oversampling.
for the environment and for your price. So much more beneficial to get yourself over there and you know, have a real working meeting and get things right.
Do the face-to-face negotiations, and you can therefore and you can edit the product while you're there. You can do some reworks,
and you've got an understanding of the manufacturing process while you're there. To then, because quite often you waste a lot of time back and forth not really understanding that, and you know,
can you just do this? And they're like, no, we can't. And you're
because
like,
that means it will fall apart.
You
don't quite
like,
understand
what do you
that.
mean it's going to fall apart? It's just fine. Just take this bit off. And they're like, no, that's a key component.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't just take that off. But then once you've seen them out there, often you can feel quite confident that you're going to be on track to meet your kind of like your sign-off dates.
Yes, definitely.
That they're going to submit the samples on time, and you can get them all in. And I say sign-off, but often it's a product review first, isn't it?
Yeah. Again, back to that point of giving certain people, certain senior members, a sort of heads up of what they're going to be walking into for the sign-off is really, really important. So some businesses do it, some businesses don't. It just depends on how much time you have, how many people there are in the office, to be honest with you. But having a pre-review, we should call it pre-review, is vital for specifically mainly own brand led businesses. To have that pre-review is so crucial before you get into the sign-off.
Get that pre-review in, then flashing those samples past, like getting you know when you're excited about something come in, like you've got past it, oh my god, when you sample, oh my god, it's amazing. Running over to show somebody, like just flash it past them super quick, like, and if they're busy but it catches their eye, they'll come over in a bit, or just drop them a note saying, oh my god, some amazing new samples come in, if you've got a chance, pop by my desk.
Yeah, exactly.
Or I've racked it up in X room, like
have a little look.
Just would
let
love
me know
to get
what
your
you think.
thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it can be quite nice to do that in kind of more of a kind of casual way as well, just to get a bit of feedback.
Yeah, and I also quite like to do that with the junior members of the team. That they hate this, but it's really good exposure for them. But, you know, if you're not quite sure on a colourway and something's coming and it's not quite right, or you're just really undecided, get them to do a floor walk.
I thought you were going to say a floor walk. I bloody love a floor walk.
Are you hoping I was dialing
I
up for
used
a
to
floor
love
walk?
doing floor walks and getting everybody's opinion and like understanding what they like, but also making sure, we were always told this, make sure you go to a large selection of people. Do not just go to like the buyers and the designers. You know, go to all
I know
areas.
that they always go, do I really have to go to finance?
Yeah, go to finance.
Yeah, go to finance, because
Go to finance,
often
go
they're
to
the most
IT.
commercial people in the room anyway.
Yeah, go to finance, go to IT, go to customer services, like go down to marketing, go down to the people team. Like,
And people love to be involved in a decision. They really
and
do.
give their
They-
opinion.
Yeah, exactly. I always say, make sure you tap on so-and-so director, you know, shoulder, and they're like, they come back and they looked really busy. I'm not gonna do it. Okay, fair enough.
And often the product review meeting, if you have one, which, as we'd say, ideal, if you can have one, it's often led by buying and design,
Yeah.
isn't it? Because both of you have really been kind of like the creative part
Yeah.
of the product. And then once you've done that, that's when you kind of bring back merchandising. Haven't forgotten about you.
Not at all.
To
Very,
start the
very
range,
important people.
Start the range building. You know, working kind of like your grading, how many stores are going to get which product.
Your rebuys. Those important
And then based
rebuys.
on that, it might be that actually you can increase some of your quantities, which then can go to further price negotiation. Or it might be that you have to pull something back and you need to go back and renegotiate on the minimum order quantity.
With your tail between your legs? Come on, please.
And then you go into your sign-off.
Which, again, I think we're going to do a big
I
episode on
think
sign-off.
that in itself does have...
It's kind of a theatrical thing, really, I think.
It is. It is. And it's definitely worth an entire episode.
Yeah.
So I think, I mean, from this point, you are hopefully going to raise your POs. You've got all your things, you know, I mean, we're skipping a few sort of minor steps in between, but ultimately kind of your key milestones would be raising your POs. You're doing any tech sealing, your packaging. You're doing your red seal samples, which is kind of like your first set of samples, which is basically making sure that that sample matches your original sample.
Yeah.
That you
Or if you've got any
agreed.
changes from the sign-off or anything.
Everything's been taken into account with it, and then you go to your pre-shipment, which must match your red seal sample, which is essentially a red seal and a gold seal often. And then it's, I guess, shipping
Yep.
into your warehouse, allocated out,
We're making the merchandising role sound very easy.
Boom,
It's
boom,
really
boom.
not.
launch.
Moment of certainty.
Then it all starts again.
Yep. Quite often it's actually started before you've even got the product
Yeah, when you've got
back
lots of
into the
different
store. When you've got lots
categories.
of different product categories. So that's where we're talking about the overlapping and just making sure that you are on track with everything. And it's just such a juggling act. You know, you have probably planned your next year and a half. So it is quite like planning for your wedding.
Just like planning for your wedding. Okay, so there was a lot of detail there.
Yes.
So we'll put more of that information available on our website at Buying and Beyond. But let's round up today. What have we learnt?
What have we learned? So, number one, plan, but be prepared for it not to go to plan.
It's so true.
Number two, the key to a successful sign-off is a clear, informative strategy and those product review touch points. And number three, everyone has a role to play, but essentially you're the conductor. The buyer must keep everyone on track and ensure that they have completed their parts of the plan.
So we hope that's inspired you and given you some food for thought of the many, many steps there are to land that product range. Tune in next week where we'll be talking through presentation skills and that crucial sign-off meeting.
Dun dun dun.
Bye!
Bye. Kate, are you a drama queen?
No, but I do like to exaggerate a little. Are you?
Drama just makes things interesting.
That's true.
All these thoughts and opinions are our own and based on our own experiences working for a wide variety of retailers. These are all in the hope to entertain and educate, and not to reflect negatively on any place we currently or have previously worked.